So to me, domestic violence is a really serious subject. And because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I think it's important for it to be discussed in any and every environment. And I think sometimes we don't think a lot about, or we don't want to make household discussions about sexual assault and domestic violence a part of our conversation, because if it's not a part of our context, we don't want to admit that it exists. But I want to first just start off by sharing some crazy statistics that I found on socialsolutions.com. Each year, more than 10 million women and men in the U.S. are subjected to domestic violence. What that means statistically is that more than 1 in 3 women, that is 35.6%, in the U.S. have reported experience with rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. And that's crazy. And that information comes from a report, a 2010 report from the CDC. So also, nearly 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced severe physical violence by an intimate partner during their lifetime. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. And I just want to make sure that I'm sharing where this information comes from. That information comes from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the U.S. Department of Justice. What else? 85% of domestic violence victims are women, and 15% are men, according to a report done by the Huffington Post. The women with disabilities have a 40% greater risk of being the victim of intimate partner violence. 63% of homeless women have experienced domestic violence in their adult lives. 28% of families were homeless because of domestic violence. And then approximately 5 million children are exposed to domestic violence every year. And children exposed are more likely to attempt suicide, abuse drugs and alcohol, run away from home, engage in teen prostitution, commit sexual assault crimes, etc. So in considering these things, I think it's important for us to first name the fact that we live among victims of sexual assault, and so it's not a joke. It's not something to talk about haphazardly. I think that we need to be thinking about the way that we socialize and make norm behaviors of those who have been the victimizers, especially of women and children. I think we need to be thinking about what that means to have a president of our country who has been allegedly named as an abuser or a sexual assaulter of women. And it's just a really deep conversation to have. But I think I want to just talk about it in my own context as an African American male who is a preacher and an educator, and someone who identifies as an ally to women, especially women of color. I think that people need to know that you cannot be a Bible-toting hand clapping, foot stomping, sexual assaulter. You cannot victimize people sexually. What sexual assault is and from a biblical standpoint, in my opinion, an abuse of power. It is an abuse of the power and of the charge that God has given men to love and to respect and to cherish and to protect women. And it is anti-Jesus Christ to do anything less than that. And I think that we are used to sort of this liberal movement against sexual assault, but we really need to think about it within the context of what abusing someone sexually means to Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ had a place in his heart, and he set the tone for ministry and for servitude and for community by protecting the individuals for which I've even noticed some stats for, whether it be widow women, homeless, children, disabled people. And so we need to really be thinking about that. So I wanted to just share this document that I found that addresses what men can do. And I think that sometimes, I'm just going to show you what this document talks about. It's from a website called voicesofmen.com. So I'm going to encourage you to check that out. I'm just going to go through some of the things that I think stood out to me. In the organization Voices of Men, their vision or mission is to end violence against women, which I think is important. And personally, I like that an organization has taken ownership of that responsibility, and they provide a list of 10 things that men can do. And I just want to kind of go over those. Number one, they say that men can break out of the man box by challenging traditional images of manhood that keep us from taking a stand. And that sounds like a pretty easy thing to do, but we really do have to challenge stigmas. And I think that this is not necessarily for the company and to convince other people that you're anti-sexual assault. I think that this challenge calls for us to initiate this kind of behavior in closed door, in close company, when we have the ability to influence, especially other men, challenging the images of manhood that falsely project or objectify women, and support this idea that it is in some way, shape, or form okay to belittle, disrespect, abuse women. Secondly, ask how you can help. If you suspect that someone is being abused, if you are abusing other people in any way, you need to ask how you can help, and you need to get help from other people. If you know of somebody that is abusing someone, your knowledge of that information positions you to be an ally and advocate for the person who is a victim to them. And I think that that's important. Number 3, teach our children that no means no. And that's simple. And no means no at every stage. No means no. Number 4, don't buy the argument that sexual and domestic violence are due to mental illness, lack of anger management skills, chemical dependency, stress, or any other excuse. And we tend to do that. Like, we can come up with like reasons why we do things, and especially in the spirit realm, like, we need to properly diagnose and categorize when Satan is attacking our minds to make us think that things that do not align with God's will are normal. And that definitely is inclusive of treating women poorly, abusing individuals that we are in intimate relationships with. Number 5, stand up and speak out. Silence affirms, it supports, it endorses sexual and domestic violence. And if you know about it, you need to be telling somebody, because you, through using your voice, you can save somebody's life. I think there's really not much more to say about that. Number 6, look in the mirror. Like, do you own attitudes? Do you own actions that help support or objectify or devalue women and girls? Like, and how do you do that? Like, ask yourself that question. If you're not sure, ask other people in your life that you believe would tell you the truth, so that you can get the answers, especially if you are serving a role as a father or a leader, especially a Christian leader or a Christian father. Those are things that we definitely need to challenge. 7, we need to be a role model for youth. Older men, more mature men need to be role models for young men, and not just passive role models like watch what I do and follow as I do, but individuals who take ownership for leading men to make positive, impactful decisions about their interactions with women. And I'm primarily talking about women in this podcast, but I know that there are so many forms of sexual abuse, but I'm focusing on relationship between male and female. Number 8, educate yourself. So the more you know, the more you are positioned to be an ally, the more you are positioned to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. And to me, this is especially important if you have a daughter. I don't know how many of you watched the show Greenleaf, but on Greenleaf, one of the granddaughters of the bishop and first lady was in a domestic violence situation, and everybody was in prevention mode, but there weren't a lot of people that were working to educate themselves. And so in the show, the young lady is taken under the wings of her grandmother and is getting up early in the morning and reading the Bible. And I am a firm believer that God's word can save and heal and redirect. But I also think it is very important for us to know what triggers this behavior in people, for us to know the pattern for which people subject themselves to this behavior, so that we know how to be the best possible allies. And that's not to suggest anything negative, but that's just to suggest that if you're going to be a good ally, you need to know what you're advocating for. Number 9 is step up and create a cultural shift. No matter who you are or where you are from or what you do for a living, like, you have the power to shift culture through your behavior, through what you say, through how you carry yourself, by the way that you use influence to influence other people who influence other people. You have the power to shift culture. And sometimes it is as simple as saying, we're not going to use that language, or I'm going to challenge you not to speak about this woman in that way, so on and so forth. And then finally, like, we can host video discussions or presenter information at our work, at our schools, at our church, at our fraternities and sororities, at our service clubs, at our sports teams, with our parent groups. Like, there are so much that we can do to spread the word about domestic violence. And every time that we do that, and I want to say also that it requires some innovative thinking. I believe that the war against domestic violence is a spiritual war. And I believe that it takes prayer and fasting and Christian strategy, because it is at its core psychological. And if you are fighting a very strategic demon, you need to be best equipped with the tools to do so. And you need to know that one of the primary things that prevails in these domestic violence situations is the spirit of manipulation. And that spirit of manipulation generally sucks people into this ideology or this mindset that they are unworthy, that they need to be connected to people who are harmful to them for some other reason, or that there is no way for them to escape even if they try. Also, the victimizer feels that they cannot attain any sort of power naturally if they do not victimize those that are not as strong as them. There are so many psychological detachments that go into domestic violence that, again, I believe it is a sheer, pure war against Satan. And unless we recognize it as such, we are going to continue to see some victimization in our community. And I think we have to ask those questions. So the Bible tells us that faith without works is dead. So it is not enough to say, I know that people are enduring domestic violence, intimate partner violence, I'm going to pray for them. We need to pray for them, and then we need to ask God to give us the strength to determine what we can do to save somebody's life. And when I'm talking about saving somebody's life, I'm talking about the victim and the victimizer, because you can save the life of somebody who just does not know. Maybe they don't know what they're doing and they just need it to be exposed to them. Maybe they haven't gone to the extreme. Maybe their victimization is psychological. There's opportunity to have that discussion, with that individual. So there are so many resources out there to help us navigate this conversation. I think it is on us to do what we can to ask the right questions, to advocate for others, to know our role, to respect and promote the women in our life, and to be engaged in this work, and to remember, most importantly, that this is a war against Satan. This is a war against Satan. And in order to defeat Satan, we need to identify the tools that Satan is working with, and we need to educate, pray and fast, pray and fast, pray and fast, and then take action. Let our faith be padded with action, and then ultimately trust God for whatever He is going to do in those scenarios. So thank you for taking the time to listen. I just wanted to take some time to talk about domestic violence because it's near and dear to my heart, and I want to make sure that it's not projected as a thing for someone else, but we can own this conversation and we can be leaders in this conversation.